So this week we got Jack the Ripper.
No, no,
Anything else to say?
no.
Okay. In late 1888 in London, a serial killer went around murdering several prostitutes in the Whitechapel district. The Whitechapel district is on the east side of London. It was filled with slums where many of London's poor took refuge. Within the slums, there were many poorly lit streets and dark alleys that connected like a maze. Prostitution was common among many women in the district as a way to make ends meet.
Everyone is a prostitute in one way or another.
Okay. Many prostitutes were alcoholics, which would put them in more danger to be scammed, assaulted, or raped. It's unclear exactly how many women Jack killed, but it's generally accepted that he killed 5 women, referred to as the canonical 5. With that, let's get into the murders.
He only killed 5?
Well, they don't know. They really don't know. Like, it could be 5, something he killed up to 11. He might not have even killed those 5.
He killed like hundreds.
No.
Why is he such a big deal?
On August 31st, 1888, at around 3:30 a.m. in Whitechapel on Bucks Row, Paul Roberts is approached by a man named Charles Cross who says, quote, "Come and look over here, there's a woman." They approach the body of prostitute Mary Ann Nichols, but both of the men were worried about being late for work and hurried off, agreeing that they would inform an officer if they found one. Shortly after, police constable John Niels finds the body, and upon further inspection he finds her throat was slit and she is still warm. At 4 a.m. Dr. Llewellyn arrives at the scene and he determines that she had not been dead for more than a half hour. He also determines that she was killed on the scene and her body hadn't been moved. Later, he also finds that her abdomen had been cut open, indicating that the killer had some, quote, rough anatomical knowledge due to all the vital parts having been cut. After her death, the timeline was pieced together, with Dr. Llewellyn claiming she had not been dead for more than a half hour at 4 a.m., and the 2 men finding her body a few minutes past 3:30 a.m. She was probably killed only a few minutes before they found her. Officer Niels had also walked through the same street about a half hour earlier and saw nothing. It should also be noted that at the time, there was a shortage of police officers in the Whitechapel district, meaning that they were stationed few and far between. On September 8, 1888, John Davis, an elderly man who was a resident at 29 Hanbury Street, found the body of prostitute Annie Chapman laying on her back at the bottom of the back door steps. At 6:30 a.m., Dr. George Phillips arrives on the scene. He finds that her throat was slit, her abdomen was cut open, and her intestines had been lifted out of her body and placed by her shoulder. He also finds that her womb is missing. Philip concludes that the killer had some anatomical knowledge. After the murder, a woman named Elizabeth Long came forward to say that she had seen Annie Chapman the night she died. Long was walking down Hanbury Street at 5:30 a.m. when she saw Chapman talking to a man in front of the building. Long heard the man say, "Will you?" and Chapman replied, "Yes." However, she didn't see anything else. Long saw Chapman's face but couldn't get a good look at the man. Around 5:30 a.m., a man 2 buildings down from the murder scene heard a woman saying no, then heard something hitting a fence. This places Chapman's time of death around 5:30 a.m. Strangely, nobody in the building had heard anything even though it happened in their backyard. On September 27th, the Central News Agency receives a letter from the supposed killer saying, quote, "Dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about leather apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores and shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal. How can they catch me now? I love my work and want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle over the last job to write with, but it went thick like glue and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough, I hope. Ha ha. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ears off and send to the police officers just for jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get the chance. Good luck. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind giving me the trade name. P.S. Wasn't good enough to post this before I got the red ink off my hands. Cursed no luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now. Ha ha. At first the police thought it was a hoax and didn't pay much mind to it, but their minds would be changed a few days later. On September 30th, 1888, at 1 a.m., Louis Deemschutz found the body of prostitute Elizabeth Stride on Burner Street near the side entrance of a club that was filled with people. At 1:16 a.m., Dr. Blackwell arrives at the scene. He finds that Stride's throat was slit, but nothing else was done to her body. He estimated that she had been dead for around 20 to 30 minutes. Police theorized that Deem Schutz interrupted the murder while it was occurring, explaining why the killer didn't mutilate her body in any way. Around 45 minutes later, about a half-mile away in Mitre Square, Constable Edward Watkins finds the body of prostitute Catherine Eddowes. She was found on her back with her throat slit and her body was terribly mutilated. The abdomen was cut open from the base of her neck all the way down to her crotch. Her intestines were pulled out and placed next to her shoulder. Many lacerations were across the face, and her right earlobe was severely cut through. By the time Dr. Frederick Brown arrived at the scene, he claimed Eddowes must have been dead within 30 minutes, meaning that Watkins most likely found her body right after she was killed. By this time, the streets between the two murder sites were filled with police and people searching for the killer. Shockingly, at 2:50 a.m., Officer Alfred Long found a ripped piece of Catherine Eddowes' apron covered in blood in the doorway of a building. Above the doorway, a message was written saying, quote, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing," end quote. The shocking part is the location where the apron was found. It was found east of Catherine's murder site, back in the direction of the first murder, meaning that the killer had walked in an area that was teeming with police and people. This led investigators to believe that the killer only would have done this if he was heading towards his home. Let's quickly look back at the timeline before the murders. Approximately 15 minutes before Elizabeth Stride's body was found, a man named Israel Schwartz was walking down Berner Street. Schwartz saw a man throwing Stride to the ground in the alley where her body was found. On the opposite side of the street, Schwartz saw a man lighting his pipe. The man who threw the woman down yelled Lipsky to the other man, and the pipe smoker started following Schwartz until he lost him. It may seem like Jack had an accomplice. However, the name Lipsky had become an anti-Semitic slur in 1887 after a Jewish man named Israel Lipsky had committed a murder. The attacker may have been directing this slur towards Schwartz, who had a strong Jewish appearance, and the pipe smoker may have just been scared off. Schwartz described the attacker as 30 years old, 5'5", dark hair, a mustache, and an overcoat, and had a black felt hat with a wide brim. Around 1:35 a.m., about 10 minutes before Catherine Eddowes' body was found, a man named Joseph Lawton had seen her talking to a man close to Mitre Square. Joseph described the man as being around 30 years old, 5'7", fair, had a mustache and had a medium build, wearing a pepper and salt-colored jacket and a gray cloth cap. With the police having no leads and 4 women dead, the public was very upset. Police Commissioner Sir Charles Warren would also be heavily criticized for not offering a monetary reward for anyone who came forward with information about the killer. On October 1st, the morning after the double murder, the Central News Agency received a letter from the supposed killer. Quote, "I was not codding dear old boss when I gave you the tip. You'll hear about Saucy Jack's work tomorrow, double event this time. Number 1 squealed a bit, couldn't finish straight off. Ha, not the time to get ears for police. Thanks for keeping the last letter back till I got to work again. Jack the Ripper," end quote. Some believe that this letter was a hoax, but at the time this letter was received, the double murder had not been publicly known. It was also only known by officials directly involved that the killer tried to cut off the ear of Eddowes, implying that this letter was most likely written by the killer. Modern handwriting analysis has also shown that the first 2 letters were most likely written by the same person. On October 16th, George Lusk received a letter. Lusk was president of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, a committee whose purpose was to assist the police of Whitechapel. The letter came with a box, and inside the box was half a human kidney preserved in wine. The letter says, quote, "From hell, Mr. Lusk. Sorry, I send you half the kidney I took from one woman and preserved it for you. Other piece I fried and ate. It was very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out if you only wait a while longer. Signed, catch me when you can, Mr. Lusk." The kidney was examined by Dr. Openshaw, who said that it was very similar to the one missing from Catherine Eddowes, but he was inconclusive. It's unknown whether this kidney is actually from Eddowes or it was a hoax, but many officials on the case thought it was a hoax by a medical student. On November 9th at 10:45 a.m., Mary Kelly's body is found on her bed in her apartment at Miller's Court. Her body was severely mutilated beyond recognition. I don't think I can repeat everything about the mutilation, so I will only broadly cover it. Her body had been cut open in multiple spots, with certain parts of her having been completely cut off and placed on the table next to the bed. Her throat had been cut and severed down to the bone. The face had been cut, beaten, and certain parts had been taken out. Her clothes were found neatly folded on the bed, and she was wearing a nightgown, indicating that she may have been asleep when she was killed. On the night of the murder at 2 a.m., a man named George Hutchinson saw Kelly talking to a man on Commercial Street. The man asked Kelly, quote, "You will be alright for what I have told you?" He then puts his hand on her shoulder, then they walk past Hutchinson, who gets a good look at the man. He is white, has a mustache with corners turned up at the end. Dark hair, dark eyes, bushy eyebrows, is about 5'7", 35 to 36 years old, has a Jewish appearance, wearing a large dark coat with a massive gold chain in his waistcoat. Hutchinson follows them to Kelly's apartment, where they stop outside and the man puts his arm around Kelly as she kisses him. They walk into her apartment and Hutchinson waits until 3 o'clock, then leaves. At 4 a.m., 2 women in apartments close by hear a woman cry out, "Oh, murder," but think nothing of it. This brings us to the end of the canonical 5, but it should be noted that there are many who believe that Jack killed more women, and it can't even be confirmed that these killings were all the work of the Ripper. What do you have to say about it?
That was a lot.
Mm-hmm. What were the names of the victims?
Jack and Diane.
All right, anyways, let's get into the suspects.
He was probably autistic.